Hello, lovely. Welcome to the Find a Lovely Life podcast, a safe place for all self love journeys. I'm your host, Monica Rodriguez, and for the past 7 years, I've been on a mission to learn how to love myself. Healing can be a really lonely journey, especially when you don't know where to start. So let's figure things out, cherish words that guide us, and of course, I'll share some of my lovely life lessons along the way. If you're looking for inspirational stories, conversations with some lovely souls, and a little life advice, I think you found the right place. Or maybe it found you. Let's try our best and find a lovely life together. Surprise, surprise. It's a podcast. I did it. This is blog to podcast, rebirth, take one, because perfection is boring. I took the plunge, and this little blog of mine is now a podcast. I have been thinking about doing this for about more than a year and a half now. For the past 7 years, I have blogged about my self love journey, and I reached a point where I didn't really know what to do with it anymore. My blog, Find a Lovely Life, served as a place for me to fall in love with writing again, and also a tool I use to navigate this sort of self imposed journey on loving myself that kind of started helping me peel back layers and really got addicted to it in a way that was healthy for me to continue to just get to know myself in ways that I had not been able to, because I am just that friend that helps others. I overserve. I'm the eldest daughter. Shout out to all the eldest daughters out there. And I really just started diving into this whole self love thing in my own way. And I started by doing what, most books and things that I could watch and learn from could teach me, because I didn't really have a role model or a blueprint on how to love myself in my own way. And so I'm a very seasonal person. I'm really into the four elements. And so I kind of, not knowing now, but when I was thinking about it, realized that I kind of started my self love journey in a very external, physical sense. Like I needed to feel and see what self love was. And that started to be, you know, started getting haircuts again, started coloring my hair, getting my nails done, pedicures, massages. I would work out, I would do things that physically would make me realize that I was taking care of myself. And then it kind of evolved into like a very mental space. I would notice how I talk to myself and wanted to practice talking to myself more like a friend, like they say, and started writing letters to myself, which I have this whole Dear Lovely series, and I'll read a letter at the end of this episode. But really, that helped me kind of put pen to paper my thoughts in a way that I wanted to kind of remind myself how love could sound like, not talking to myself in a negative way, or trying to use words as a powerful tool to remind me that I was not talking to myself in ways that I would talk to someone else that I loved. And then once I kind of got the hang of that, it turned into more of a channeling sort of relationship with God, the universe type of access point again. And more layers of onions of Shrekness started like peeling. And then the pandemic happened. And I was sort of forced to advocate for myself in ways that I had never done before. as someone with an autoimmune disease, it really sort of reframed my own narrative of self love and advocacy. And so a lot of it became this sort of heart healing shadow work journey of healing past versions of myself. I started therapy for the first time in my life and did really extensive healing through that for 2 years. And then I kind of started in that same middle of the pandemic way, in a very fiery action, decided to completely flip the narrative of my life and was one of the earlier great resignators, left my 9 to 5 job to pursue my dreams of becoming an author. And I ended up becoming a literary agent first. I still write, I am still an author. And this is sort of another way for me to fall in love with writing again in a different creative way. And I wanted to continue actively falling in love with myself and more so with my life, for a life that I would create as an ongoing process in a self love journey. And I always knew that I wanted this space to eventually be more than just about me. I think 7 years of really using it as a tool to really dig in and love myself was great. But I think last year, with my word being community, it started to kind of take a different form. And the idea of this project being a service of myself reached sort of in a comfortable standstill. And I thought about deleting my blog or just saving it for myself and removing it from the internet. And there was a lot of doubt, to the point where I kind of reached the point of like, what is the point of this territory? And then this idea of making it a podcast started to creep in, and I would entertain that. I would make a bunch of graphics, I would share with my friends and family, and then I would abandon it. I would think about it, and then I would, go into the cycle again of talking to people about it. And this cycle sort of happened for like about a year, until maybe a year later, I started getting sort of invited on speaking on podcasts, and I realized how much I really loved talking to people intentionally. So I kind of decided to lean into it, and I've been having a lot of conversations around creativity versus productivity. And I always thought, for some reason, that a podcast was just being productive and not really creative. But as we start to get to know each other more, you'll find that I like to sort of dive in and figure things out and see what they kind of show me and redefine things for myself along the way. And so I decided that if I was going to keep doing this, blog, writing, documenting my life in a certain way, that I was going to need to be some sort of rebirth. And I wanted it to be a place where I could keep loving myself and sharing that journey with others, but also adding more lovely souls to that journey and learning from them as well, and documenting the lives of people and how they love themselves and how they create lives that they love. And I think after 7 years of committing to self love, I can tell you firsthand that that's kind of how self love feels. It's just a constant rebirth. And so here we are, episode 1 of the Find a Lovely Life podcast. And I definitely still want to help guide and share some tools that I have learned on my own self love journey, and also talk to people who love growing and learning and creating lives that they love. And so I always feel like there's not one way to do a self love journey, it's different for everybody. And the more self love journeys that are documented, I feel, or the more that you hear, can sort of be a testament to your own, and you can practice, plug and play, and see what works for you. But my hope is that I continue to use this as a vehicle to help continue to build a place where we all sort of feel less alone and support self love, because it's really lonely when you start that process. And what it becomes, it kind of creeps up behind you. uh, the self love journey actually turns into a healing journey, which definitely does not come with a blueprint and can be very daunting and scary. And there can be a lot of start and stops because it just is, it could be a lot that you're carrying that you've silenced for so long. And I think when I first started my self love journey, the goal was always to love myself so much that people thought I was actually in a relationship with someone else, because I always wanted to get to a point where I wanted to love myself so much that when I did get in a relationship, I would evolve and still change, but the relationship that I had with myself would be amplified by another person. And I think I sort of reached that goal. I have been in a relationship with myself for 7 years now, in with intent, and it's been the most healthy and probably longest commitment that I've ever been in, besides my wonderful dog Jude, who's sleeping, might make an appearance and growl, or more like old man noises. He makes more old man noises when I'm talking too much, and now he's awake. And I summoned him into this now. Anyways, I digress. So, I think it's a relationship with yourself is the most healthiest and possibly the most important. And if you don't believe me, I have another source for you. So, I remember going to a Beyonce concert, and she had told us to sing Halo to someone you love. And if you didn't have someone, to sing it to yourself, because the relationship you have with yourself is the most important one that you're ever going to have. So thank you to Beyonce. And I think that moment was really instrumental for me in my own self love journey, because even after that concert, I think I started hearing music a bit differently and would often sing to myself songs that were meant to be sang to partners, because I realized that I was in a partnership with myself and I was in a relationship with myself. And I think that in any self love journey, you're going to shed some layers and you're going to bloom some new flowers. And you might not know how to take care of those flowers because they're new. And I think no matter where you're sort of starting this journey, whether it's tomorrow, today, a year from now, a month ago, maybe. And I think continuing to water those flowers is sort of where it can get hard. And last year was really rough and magical, and I did a lot of building foundations. I've done a lot of growth and self love healing. And when the new year started, and it's always kind of like this restart button that I'm just like ready to push, I realized that I wasn't really interested in abandoning all the work that I had done and starting completely new. And I think a lot of what I've learned about self love is that if it was a board game, it would be a little like Shoots and Ladders meets Jenga, with a bunch of plants and weeds growing out of the tower. And you got to water it some days and rebuild the tower other days. And some days are like slides, and other days are ladders that are on fire. And obviously, this game is a liability, but I want you to imagine the chaos of growth in a self love journey more like a garden that you're building and you're continuing to nourish, like watering those flowers. Because I think, like all things in life, there's not really, at least I don't think, that there's such thing as a finish line. And being on a self love journey is all about climbing and resting when necessary. And it's a metamorphosis, and it's grief, and it's celebrating new chapters and new people in your life, and closing doors to open new ones and keeping old ones open just at the right time when you're ready to close them. And it's not necessarily a checklist unless you use it as a bucket list to do the things that you love. And I think tools like this sort of help provide that framework to jump into a self love journey that makes sense for you. And one of those tools that I love kind of goes in hand with bucket lists and starting, the beginning of the year, the first half of the year with this concept of making bucket lists instead of resolutions. And I did that for a couple of years, and they were really, really fun years. And at one point, I shifted into this new thing where I picked a word and it sort of blooms and defines itself throughout the year. And this year, my word is receive, which as a go getter, it's a really hard concept for me. And I like to pick words as tools to anchor my self love journey to help me kind of go back to that word if I feel like I'm getting chaotically lost and I can't seem to like find my compass. The word is sort of my compass for my self love journey or chapter or season of that year. And I even went back in my blog vault and completely forgot that I actually did a 40-day challenge where I practiced receiving, and I was shocked because one, I forgot about it, but sometimes when you're hyper self-aware like I am and you grow at the pace of the Energizer Bunny, you zoom past really important self-love markers. And so I kind of wanted to take the time to remind myself about that time crunch 40-day growth that I'm now sort of activating as a year-long practice. And one of the exercises I would do during those 40 days was pick up sticks as part of my walk. And then a few minutes later, before I would release it, I would wait for the universe to let me know, like, okay, let it go. And even that exercise was really, really hard. In the first like 2 minutes, I felt this intense bond with the stick, even though it was just a stick, and then realized my attachment to it was a really too strong. And of course, that was tied to control issues. And this was 2 years ago. And thank goodness for therapy because we really worked on that one for a while. But the thing I learned the most, I think, was about being present and finding pockets of joy that I didn't have to create and asked the universe to send me gifts, and also live like a Roman woman was sort of the brand that I put on that 40-day challenge. So I definitely think I need to activate that version of me again. But I think the most important thing for me was sort of building on the whole concept of choosing a word to anchor me. That kind of helps provide a loose path and helps me work with the universe and not feel totally alone in trying to become a better version of myself, because self love just feels so isolating. I think I use words to help guide me, and maybe they might be the anchor that you're looking for too. And as part of any sort of self love journey, I think the biggest thing that I have learned is how much of it is really about committing to taking back your power, because you're trying to figure out the best way to navigate things for you. And wherever you are on your journey, that might seem like a really scary concept. It might feel like an exciting concept. But my advice would be to be open to whatever you choose to guide you. Self love is sort of like a choose your own adventure kind of thing. I don't know if you remember those books. I really loved them growing up. But it's about investing in decisions that mean something to you. I think the whole point is to learn how to trust yourself more as well. And I think where I am now is a lot farther than I was 7 years ago, but I'm also a lot farther than I was yesterday. So even acknowledging that step forward day by day, I think literally just one step at a time is the best way to start your self love journey and find connection and self worth, moments of self worth in it. And one of the biggest things I did last year was sort of look for a supportive community that could help continue to guide me and hold me accountable for the life that I wanted to create. And it took a while, but I did meet some pretty lovely souls. And one of the most supportive friends that I have is Jenissa Graham, who actually reached out to me first on Twitter, and we became online friends that now pretty much text each other, voice memo each other almost every day. So it's proof that online friends can become some of your best friends. And our conversations are always centered around what we love to do and who we want to be. And I really wanted her to be the first guest because if it wasn't for her and maybe my sister, who I'll give a shout out to, and a few others who continue to push me to do this because they could hear it in my voice when I would talk about it, that I wanted to think bigger for myself and keep betting on myself in different ways. And if it wasn't for Janessa for reminding me to think bigger, I think this blog rebirth would still be in a whirlpool of doubt. So I can't wait for you all to meet her and hear her story about the words that have helped anchor her and continue to be a big part of her own self love journey and creating a life that she loves fearlessly. Hello, Janessa. How are you?
Hello, Monica. I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited to talk to you. I know we've kind of are always supporting each other and talking about putting ourselves first. And so I thought, why not talk about that in a way where we can inspire other people to put themselves first too? But why don't we start by just telling us something that you love about yourself?
Oh, wow. I think that's like one that's hard to do, but I think one thing I really do like about myself is my ambition. I think that kind of fuels my day to day, especially on the days where I'm not feeling like my best self.
Yeah, no, I get that. I also feel like I agree with that. I think your ambition is super inspiring. And I think that's the best thing about kind of figuring out things that you love about yourself. Sometimes having those in the back pocket and not every day is a good day is the important part. Um, in those days that you kind of feel like you're not feeling yourself, what's something that sort of brings you joy?
I think honestly, this year, my community around me, and I think like when I am feeling down or not feeling my best self, being able to be vulnerable to talk to those people that I do trust
Mhm.
and they're like snapping me out of it or getting me back into shape. So I think that's really needed, especially if you're, on this quest to chase your dreams.
Yeah, I as you know, my word last year was community, and that definitely sort of turned on this supportive system that I had been looking for so long. And it took a while to kind of find my people, or we often call it our soul tribe, and those that sort of like understand you and believe in you, I think is one of the hardest things to like find in that consistency of continuing to show up in each other's lives and support each other in new ways. This year, as you know, my word is receive, which I've been working on. And I know that last year you kind of went on a self love journey with your word being me, which when we were first talking about it, I loved it because I think one of the things I love about you is when you choose your words, they're so open to leading you down so many different paths. And I'd love to hear, what you loved about that word and focusing on yourself last year and what you learned from it.
Yeah, so I think it really derived from even the year before that, so 2022, and just trying to get everything together. That word of the year for me was balance, and I think so many things happened during that time. I was moving, I was helping my friend plan a wedding. There's just so many things. I changed careers around that time,
Mhm.
so I just felt like there wasn't really stable ground. There wasn't stability, and I feel like really trying to sit down how am I gonna get that stability? And then I have to realize it starts with me. It starts with
Mhm.
me being able to ground myself, pull back if things are getting too hectic and really kind of refocusing and recentering. And so I realized also as we grow up, we realize not our negative traits, but the things that are kind of hindering us from being our best self. And part of that was giving so much that I had nothing left for myself. And I feel like I was getting to the point where I was pouring from an empty cup.
Mm.
And I feel like, everybody's saying it now, but self-care isn't selfish, and so really being able to be like, "I love you, but this is only what I'm able to give at this point in time because I do need the rest
Mhm.
for myself."
Yeah, I think that was a big thing I learned too, is sort of setting boundaries. And it got harder to set boundaries with people that were so used to me being a certain way without prioritizing myself. And I used to be a chronic people pleaser. And I think in that sort of self love journey, continuing to, like you said, build upon that and starting with you, choosing boundaries that really sort of help put you first is a really hard concept. Um, sometimes, how did you feel like was it harder to set boundaries with people that, known longer, and how did that sort of come into setting boundaries now, even a year after you kind of started doing that?
Yeah, it was definitely hard with people that I knew and even with my family members because I think
Mhm.
at a certain point in time, I can be like the reliable friend. And like, sometimes I may not be able to make it to drinks on Friday, but if you call me at the end of the day, and not like a life or death situation, but if you really need me, like I'm there. I'm an active
Yeah.
service person. So I had attached my worth for so long to what
Mm,
people can get from me and just what I'm able to give. When I realized that me myself is, a prize when it comes to like what I'm able to give to the world and that's what I can do for people. And so it was really setting boundaries with people that I already knew because my biggest fear is kind of disappointing people.
mhm,
And I think that's a go again, like attaching my self worth to that yes or no. But I
mhm,
had to realize that in this season of my life, like I owe it to myself to show up like I show up for other people.
mm. Yes, always. Was there something that you learned from that year of me that you kind of are carrying over or that really stuck with you that might help someone that's kind of hesitant to put themselves first and is such an active service person?
Yeah, I think one is it can be hard because when you start setting those boundaries, you'll see how people react to it,
Mhm.
but the ones who are only looking to get something from you will naturally fall away, and
Mm,
don't feel bad if that happens because they weren't meant to be in your life for that long anyway,
mm,
and the people who see you putting yourself first and even your dreams first, they're gonna care and respect that and say like, "Hey, okay, she can't do it today," or "This is a no," but that's fine because I know, like, what her overall journey is. I think doing so, you'll feel freer because I think like when I said
mhm,
no to something, like I just felt that weight come off and be like, okay, I don't have to
mhm,
handle that. And so I feel like to be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to lose people during that process
mhm.
who really weren't meant to be with you for the long term anyway.
Yeah, I think that's always something really hard for me, when I first meet someone and I really, really want them to be in my life and sort of have this tendency to just be so open and activate that sort of active service, givingness. And then the more and more I kind of practice self love actively, the more and more I would start to realize how much, like you said, that empty cup would show up and it would almost be harder for me and I would burn out faster because the awareness of that sort of relationship, can be heartbreaking. And I still grieve certain relationships that have, left my life. And I feel like I've always said like the right people find you at the right time. And the ones that are meant to stay do. And I think also to that, I think relationships in general, whether it's romantic or platonic, take work and take effort and take consistency. And like you said, seeing that big picture, I really want supportive friends that see the potential, which you have been such an instrumental part of me being able to see my potential and never accepting less. And if I ever want to quit, you're always like, "What are you talking about?" Which is another thing that I really love about you. And I think that kind of goes into how you've went from like building that foundation for yourself and prioritizing yourself, and then how did you kind of come up with your word for this year of more? And did you feel like you were just so that freedom that you felt, like you want more of that? And how has more sort of started to show up in your life now?
I think more was really the word that I'm still trying to figure out. And I feel like
Mhm.
once I set my word for the year, it's not until halfway into it where I'm like, oh, this is what,
Yeah,
God or spirit meant by this word. So like when
yeah.
balance came, I was like, oh, it's gonna be even and kill year. Great. But when midway into that year, I'm like, oh, I have a million things going on. So my lesson this year is like how to balance everything. Even for me, I was like, okay, it's gonna be easy to say no to people, but like having those tough conversations, like it really challenges me. So I think right now for more, I'm really being open to what that means. Does that just mean like
Mhm.
more freedom? Does that mean more relationship, more opportunities. Does that mean like saying yes to everything? And so right now, I'm really in the ebb and flow of just allowing things to happen and
Mhm.
taking these opportunities that come into it. And I think that came from the inspiration of like the past 2 years. Again, really trying to focus in on me and now like my self worth and my self respect. Like I deserve more. I've
Mhm.
worked hard. I've put in that work. I've seen other people do things. I've helped people accomplish their dreams. I've spoken into other people, and now it's my turn. And I think that's part of
Mm.
like that catalyst for was really driving that word more.
Yeah, and it really does sort of continue to build. I think that's one of the things I love about noticing how words carry over. Um, for you, it's such a kind of back into taking control of that for yourself and saying you want more for your life, and continuing to fill your own cup. Um, how I know I know I'm always kind of like the Aries in me comes into this new year and is like, I gotta master it in January. And it's been really hard for me to kind of release control of receiving and being open to receiving. I keep being reminded of that in different ways. Um, are there any sort of reminders? How do you kind of check in with yourself to remind yourself to prioritize yourself and that you do deserve more?
Yeah, I think one is like listening to my body, and
Mm,
so I know we were talking about it earlier on, but I was like, "Oh my god, it's like it's only mid-February and I'm already
yeah.
exhausted." And that's not okay. And it's also kind of like reevaluating what more means. So like
Mm,
maybe in, Q1 and Q2, more literally just means sitting back and allowing more to happen to me rather
mm,
than me taking on the facilitative role to do more and burn myself out. I think
mhm,
the beauty of like choosing words as well as like trying to figure out how is the word gonna shape me in this
mhm.
quarter or like even this week?
Yeah.
So I think listening to my body when it comes to that one, and I think that's been kind of the driving force right now.
Yeah, I love that because I agree. I feel like sometimes I try to put a definition on the word that I choose for the year, and then when the whole point of the exercise is for the word to surprise me in its own way and teach me and redefine itself. And I love what you said that even if it's Q1, if it's a month, if it's a week, or how am I going to receive more today? Like, how am I going to open myself up to reminding myself today and taking it day by day. And I do like using words because we're both writers. Words sort of like is how we kind of express ourselves, channel, do any sort of like connection with ourselves, with spirit. And like, I think a lot of times using those tools can be beneficial to bringing yourself back or like in a grounding sort of practice. So, is there a tool that you've been discovering or feeling that's really resonating with you right now that's helping you kind of get back and remind you to prioritize yourself?
Yeah, so like lately I've been trying to do like an end of the week or on the weekend, like a check-in. Like, how did I feel this week? What did I feel like I accomplished? What things are kind of going to unfold and go into the next week? And I think that's more of like
Mhm,
a sense of grounding. And I think sometimes it is
mhm.
like less is more. Like I didn't do anything today.
Yeah.
And that's okay because I was able to fill up my cup and do different things. Or, today was really productive because of X, Y, and Z reasons. And I think, like you said, we are writers, so
Mhm,
words do ground me in particular. Like I have sticky notes back there that have like word of affirmations. That's my second love language. So
mhm.
just being able to either like journal or just come back and just doing daily check-ins because I'll check in with my friends, but I was like, okay, I check in with myself.
Mm.
Like, what is myself feeling like throughout the season? Because I think sometimes, we are ourselves, but we might not have the frequency or even the awareness to check in and make sure that we're doing okay. We're just running off of autopilot.
That's such a it's such a simple step, but it's so easily forgotten. And I think for people that really sort of love so deeply and prioritize other people and caring for them in ways that making sure that they're okay, you can kind of get stuck in this almost like running around in circle cycle and you're not even realizing that you're draining yourself by continuing to give cups and cups and cups and cups and then at the end of the day it's like a dry desert for you and I think even that just like checking in with yourself. I know for me, I do a lot of walking, like connecting. I need to get outside. I need to get off my computer. I need to walk and just hear nature. Sometimes I'll go super hippie and, like, touch a tree. Like, I just need to, like, disconnect from how fast the world moves, but also how fast I operate in terms of work. I work really quickly, and sometimes I can forget to eat even, which is sometimes a little dangerous for me personally. But knowing that, like, always kind of calling yourself back to yourself, I think, is a great practice of loving yourself and checking in to make sure. And some days aren't going to be great. And I think that's one of the important things that I always emphasize with self love is that it's not going to feel the same every day. And it's not this like thing where maybe one check in, it's like you had a really bad day and not to attach your self worth to that one bad day um, because I think going back to, like, I kind of always been a lone wolf and feeling like if I did have a really bad day, I would feel like I couldn't reach out to someone to talk to them, even if it was just kind of like a small text or a voice memo or something. And I think finding people um, and I think something that we do that I really love is before we kind of dump, or maybe we dump and then, automatically take it back and say, "Oh crap, do you have space for this?" Like, do you have like, checking in with each other in the same way that you check in with a friend, like, asking yourself, checking in, but, um, always kind of in a way, I feel like we've been practicing a lot, like, asking for consent to s for space, knowing that we'll be there, which is also, like, a self-love thing and a moment to ask yourself, "Can I? Do I have time? Do I have space?" Have you been practicing that a lot more recently? Is that something that's been helping you check in with yourself more too?
I think you're trying to do that, and so, like you said, like, texting you first or being like,
Yeah.
"Hey," or send you, like, a 4-minute voice note, like, "Oh, crap. Don't read this if we don't have the space, just keep it, and you can respond when you have the time." And I've also done things where, like, I've sent a voice note to myself, like, I've texted myself
Ooh.
and just ranted, and it doesn't need to leave, like, anybody if I don't feel like journaling, so if I'm on the move, I'll just rant, or just, like,
Mhm.
talking out loud about, like, how my day's going, like, "I can't believe this happened, X, Y, and Z," because sometimes it's just getting it out and
Yeah.
being done with it and being like, "Okay, that moment happened, now how am I gonna fix it?" And I think that all kinda came from one, it was a tweet actually that I saw about a woman talking about her relationship, and she was saying,
Mm.
realizing that my husband just likes to vent, and her naturally being like a troubleshooter or a fixer, and so she
Mhm.
always assumed that being that person meant she had to come up with a solution. When in that time he just wanted to rant. So I feel like now I'm even like
Mm.
asking people now if they're talking to me, do you want a solution or do you just want space to rant? Because I can give you both. Because I think sometimes me
Yeah.
being a troubleshooter, I don't realize that I'm fixing people, and they might not need that in the moment. It's just a I just want to tell you about my day and how the person pissed me off, not steps of like how to fix it. Just being able to be in that safe space of being vulnerable in this one time. So me just
No,
trying to be more self aware of like how to deal with people in those interactions.
that resonates so much, and I never thought as an oversharer sometimes, I never thought as using a voice memo to myself as a tool to cool off before I just kind of overshare a little too much sometimes, and I think I'm gonna start doing that as a tool for myself, but also to your point of, um, always being the troubleshooter, I think, um, I myself, like, even with my siblings, like, as the eldest daughter, sometimes I just go into autopilot of troubleshooting, and I've been practicing a lot of, like, "Okay, do you need me to give you advice?" I'm, like, the advice person, and I think sometimes it drains me without me even allowing myself to check in and ask, "Does this person even need advice right now?" And I think that's a really important way to conserve energy for yourself. Because I think another thing is just very much buzzing and always wanting to, how you put it, troubleshoot and help people and always give advice to people. And then sometimes I realize, probably mid conversation, that all I've been doing is giving advice and they're just kind of taking it, but I haven't really gotten anything else out of this conversation, and it's like, today drained me because I didn't stop and think, "Did they ask for this?" They're just kinda, like, sucking it out of me, and that's fine, but next time, maybe checking in and asking that, setting that boundary and of intention with a friend, or a partner or a coworker even too, I think is really helpful. Is there anything that you're reading right now or like that tweet that's been inspiring you to kind of check in with yourself more and that word more, like a new definition that you've recently discovered?
I think right now I'm rereading Bell Hooks' All About Love.
I
And so
love
it
that
kind of
book.
breaks down, yeah, and so it
Yeah,
breaks down, self-love and even relationships and how we kind of define love. And I
yeah.
think kind of that ambiguous, like, what does love mean? And like, how does that show up
Mm,
in your day to day and not putting such a concise definition on it? Because I am such a black and white person. And I'm
mhm.
realizing that the world is more gray than I would
Yeah.
like. And so really trying to kind of get that aspect of it.
I love that book, and I kinda went on a bell hooks, like, uh, work update, like, wanted to read, I think, and, like, was talking about sort of the concept of that and how it's different for different people when I was kind of trying to learn community because it wasn't a skill that I necessarily had, and that's something that I kind of feel like when I kinda choose a word, it's hard for me to detach from, like, allowing the word to teach me and then also going full, like, I'm gonna just read every single book and, like, try to learn without being open. Is there anything that you feel kind of allows you to be more open to receiving versus, like, having you always kind of do the work yourself?
I think it's not one thing, but I'm noticing the more that I'm trying to take control of something, things
Mm,
just aren't moving.
yeah.
And so now I'm at the point where, like, maybe I'm at my ceiling, I'm just kind of like, "I've done plan A, B, C, D, and E. So maybe it's time to just let the universe take it because I'm all out of options." The troubleshooting, needs a reboot. It is down for the count, and so I feel like
Yeah.
sometimes life is literally teaching you, like, "Okay, I'm going to allow you to keep trying to figure this thing out. I'm gonna make sure that it's not going to work out because the overall
Mm,
goal is to let me do it for you, not you do
mm.
it yourself."
Yeah.
And so it's frustrating, but just realizing, like, "Okay, I shouldn't even be in this business right now of my life. I need to just be going through and staying present in the moment." I think that's my biggest thing, just staying present in the moment.
I love that, and it's really hard to. I think I've been trying to take mornings and, like, also knowing that every sort of, like, routine type thing that I do might change for me, depending on I'm a very mood-based routine person, and if I don't feel like it, I don't necessarily like forcing myself all the time. It comes different when I'm trying to, like, push through a goal or something like that, but staying present for me is always really it's kinda going back to that checking in with yourself is a great way to check in and just breathe. I think one of the first, I guess, definitions that I received of I was trying to figure out, like, "Well, what is receive? What is receive?" And one of the first things that came to me was, like, "Breathe. Just breathe. You breathing in air is receiving air." And it was, like, the most simplest, basic, uh present moment practice too of trying to figure out not even trying to figure out, but trying to understand what that could mean, and if I continue to do that and sort of, like you said, remove myself from, you know, we're very strategic people, we're always trying to, like, have a leg up, and sometimes the leg up might be to pause. I think that's something that I think trying to lean into a little bit more. We're still kind of in winter, but kind of gearing up into spring and stretching the limbs a little bit more. But I remember telling you, like, I was almost sedating myself a lot in January. Like, I wanted to get such a really quick jump start on the year, and I wanted to kind of kick it off in the most successful way possible. But success is like so subjective. And I had to check in with myself and say, what it's month 1. Like, what are you trying to do so quickly? And I think we live in a world and we work in an industry that is super go, go, go. And so I love sort of that groundingness of being present and using different tools like that voice memo thing I'm definitely gonna have to use for myself. Obviously, I'll still voice memo you, but maybe maybe there'll be
Please do.
some like I'll filter it. But no, no filter with you. With all of that, we kind of, you know, are really passionate about creating a life that we love. And the whole point of me starting this blog like 7 years ago was really a self love journey that turned into me kind of wanting to create a life that I loved and defining that for myself and knowing that that could change throughout my life. And I know you have, you recently kind of moved and like jump started creating your own happy, lovely life. What would you tell someone who's sort of looking to start, but they don't really know what that first step is to create a life they love?
Yeah, I think it might be simple, but it would just be to start.
Yeah.
Because I think we always have, like, that A to Z, and it's the B, C, D, E, and I think that's what it was. When I was still living in Georgia and I wanted to move to New York, I was like, "What about this, and what about that?" And I feel like, 1, taking advantage of the windows of opportunity that will come, and then just
Mhm.
trusting that, like, if this is really, like, the path that's meant for me, it's going to work out.
Yeah.
And even if, like, that first step doesn't work out, I will be redirected to the people to put me in place for that. So I think it's kind of that pause or that fear or even that perfectionism that it has to
Mhm.
be perfect that's going to keep you at a standstill. And then a year's going to go by and you're saying the same things. I feel like the first thing is start. Life is messy. Every new season is going to be messy until you're learning, like, what is my place in this season? Like, what is it that spirit wants
Mhm.
to show me? What is it that I need to know? Like, who am I even in the season? That comes with time when you're already
Mhm.
kind of in the thick of it or when you come from the end of it. But in the beginning, you're not going to know.
Mhm. That's one of my favorite parts that I love about self-love journeys is the figuring it out part because that's sort of what the best growth comes in, and it's the scariest part, but it's really the make or break point of you continuing to choose yourself, and that's honestly the most radical self-love thing that you can do is to bet on yourself, and I agree with start. I That's actually a good word. I might put that in
File it for
a
later. Yeah.
word thing, file it for later for another year because I feel like you can start or restart. So if anyone listening doesn't have a word yet, maybe we just found you one that could kind of activate the path that might. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to be a straight line. The path will be curvy and long and winding, but you hold the compass, so that's going to be the fun part. And kind of like as we start to like wrap things up, um, how would you love to be remembered?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think one, by the end of it, someone that was fearless. So somebody
Mm,
who really was just
yeah.
taking advantage of things and was like, yeah, I'm down to do this, X, Y, and Z. Like just taking chances no matter the
Mm,
risk. So maybe like even a risk taker, but to the extent to where, like you said, like I'll bet on myself every single time. Just
mm,
because like when you know yourself and like your work ethic and your passion and who's really who you're kind of following in that sense of the spirit, if it's God, whatever you believe in, like knowing that like
mhm,
I'm gonna bet on myself because I'm not by myself in this situation. I have a community behind me, I have
mhm,
spirit behind me, and just seeing how that happens. And yeah, so I think that's the very modest
mhm.
answer. But the other side of me is like my Leo moon is like a powerhouse. So like I
Eh.
came in, yeah, I came in, I know what I wanted to do, and I set the goals and made the steps to do it. So you get two answers from me.
Very Gemini of you. I was expecting that. I was ready for it. But I love that because fearless is like also the most ultimate trust fall, like which is really hard to do sometimes. But I love that. So you've given us so much advice, and I'd love to return that with pulling one of our favorite things. A tarot card or an oracle card for you? What would you like?
Let's do a tarot card
I knew you were I knew
because
it.
mhm,
I got your favorite deck right here,
that is my favorite deck. It's a go-to.
Janessa and I bonded over tarot because it's been such a great way to kind of um, listen to ourselves and our own intuition. And it's a very self love practice for me, at least. I know we've talked about it a little bit for you too. So I am, if you can't see, I'm shuffling. You're just listening. You can hear the shuffle of the cards. So let's see, we'll give one card for Janessa. Mm. You got the Ace of Pentacles. Talk about more and new beginnings. I heard you tell us why you let out a breath there for a second, Janessa.
Because one, I've been seeing that card a lot. When I've, dabbled into my own cards and watched other
Mhm.
tarot readers, that has always been like the overall energy for even 2024.
Yeah.
But it's also the pentacle, so it's like the slowest moving energy of the deck. And I think that's what it is because I have no patience. So it's just kind of like, okay, spirit, I know what you're telling me. It's
Yeah.
coming. Relax.
Mm. And, like, I wanna point out, I always we're using the Light Seers deck, which is one of Janessa's favorite decks that she introduced me to, and this card specifically, I always kinda look at the visuals. Pentacles is sort of earth, material, grounding, but there's roots attached to this visualization of it, and I feel like kind of encompassing our whole conversation of, you did the work, and you did plant the seeds, and, like, those roots are thick and they got some length to them, and it's almost like at the very top here, like the baby sprouts coming out, and I always like to associate aces as like God spirit, the universe kind of holding and giving it to you, and I feel like it's not a silver platter because it shouldn't be. It should come from the earth, from the ground for you. So I think that's a great card to kind of continue on more, and it is a slow moving energy, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening because it has so much, I don't want to say weight, but I want to say um, time well spent on you betting on yourself and growing. And self love is a slow moving energy because it's a process, and it continues to, you know, grow roots in different places in different ways. So it also means new money and new
Yeah.
beginnings.
I value it because it's also just a card of like it's reliable. And I
Yeah.
think being an air sign, we're very so much like in our head and just in the clouds. So it's really kind of
Yeah.
like, okay, now we're grounding this, now we're making your dreams a reality. So I do need that reliable, tangible energy.
Stable.
So
Stability.
we love to see it, you know.
We love these words.
We love these, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining and just sharing all your wisdom with us. And I know I'm going to take some of those tools that you've been using and apply them to my self love journey too. Any last words of advice for our community?
Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited. Everyone's self love journey is different for what they
Mm,
want. So I feel like take time for that, really figure out what that self love means to you.
yes. And like the words we choose, it will continue to define itself in different seasons of your life. So get ready for a new beginning. I think that's the that was the last I always like to have spirit, God, the universe have the last word, and that was the last word is a new beginning, a new
Mic
pinnacle.
drop.
Pinnacle
Mic
drop.
drop.
I hope you loved that chat as much as I did. And one of the things that has helped me, kind of to Janessa's point, and like sending herself voice memos, was writing letters to myself. And this sort of helped me start opening up to myself in a private way on my own. Now it's completely public, like it's online. You can read all of them if you want to. But sort of reminded me of what it sounded like to be guided by love. And so I think I started writing lovely letters to myself because I wanted to tap into a new voice that I could practice hearing more often, and learning to talk to myself in a way where it came from love and not anxiety meant I would have to sort of tap into my heart. Ooh. And sometimes that was a hard place to venture to, especially early on. But I always want to end the podcast with a letter as just a reminder of what it could sound like in a pure poetic form. I'm not going to go ASMR, but I wanted to end the podcast every episode with a letter. And so I wrote this letter 4 years ago. And I don't even remember exactly what I was going through, but it still warms my soul and also makes me uncomfortable to read it out loud, which I think is more of the reason why I should keep doing it, so I can receive it myself. And hopefully, you can join me in opening up that door so you can get that big warm hug too. And so, this letter is called Dear Lovely, You Are Loved. And I thought it was a great one to kind of kickstart this whole venture to remind you that you are loved, even if the start of your self love journey or in the middle of your self love journey kind of feels like it's a day that you're kind of not feeling like you are loved. And that's okay because I have those days sometimes too. So I'm going to try to read it as serious as possible, even though it's not that serious. But okay, we'll see if this triggers anything for me. We can be triggered together. All right. Dear Lovely, you are loved. Not only by a love that will come, not only by the love you can't seem to believe, but the love within you and all around you. You are loved by a simple morning. You are loved by a smile. You are loved by action, and you are loved by word. I know this week might be hard for you, surrounded by expectations and thoughts about how to see yourself be loved. Instead of ignoring it this time, I want you to communicate it, show it. Don't silence your needs for the sake of embarrassment. Your truth will set a domino effect out into the world. You'll inspire someone to show their love too. You'll fill others with it and in turn fill yourself up. Don't get discouraged. Believe me when I say the love you're searching for will come. That love may be a person, it may even be a place. It may come from the one you love or the one you're waiting for. But instead of waiting for that love, go out and grab it for yourself. Be the love you seek. How you love yourself today will show the world how they should love you. So, my dear, if you want flowers, go buy flowers. If you want some chocolate, go buy chocolate. We live in a world where we're expected to show love and grand gestures for a single day like Valentine's, as if love were a box to just check off and be done with. The world moves on to the next thing a few hours later, but you and I both know that the love that you deserve is forever. Love takes time. Love is patient. Love is always. Love is change. Love is yours to give and yours to receive. Remember that the love you have inside is waiting to burst out and show you everything you've been waiting for. Because with the love inside you, my dear, every day is worth celebrating. With love, Monica. And that's the episode. I hope you're inspired to love yourself a little more than you did yesterday, and you're on your way to finding a lovely life you love. If you want to read more about my self love journey, head over to findalovelylife.com. Subscribe, rate, and share this podcast if you feel called to. Remember that your self love journey can start or restart at any point. There are no rules. Stay connected with us on social at Find a Lovely Life. Or if you want to see more of Monica Life, you can find me at Lovely Monica, and that's spelled LOVELEEMONICAA. I'll say goodbye for now. Thanks for listening. Until next time.